what I thought we would start out with today is a little bit of a background, this idea of lovable cities, get you guys up to speed a little bit about that. I'm going to show you a bunch of examples, and then we're going to get you guys working. So does that sound good? All right, and we're all adults here. If you want a coffee, water, anything like that, you're not going to bug me at all. If you want to get up and move around to do that, I think men's rooms, ladies' rooms, all good, okay? All right, so why do lovable cities matter? That's a question that I started asking myself about a year and a half ago when I sat down to really write this book. Turns out it's not as common as you would think that people actually love their cities. And that's actually pretty sad. The Gallup organization, in conjunction with the Knight Foundation, between 2008 and 2010, they conducted what they called their Soul of the Community survey. They interviewed like 40,000 people, 26 cities, and they were basically taking the temperature and asking the question, so what is the state of our relationship with our cities? And it turned out that that relationship is not very good. 40% of people said that they were unattached to their place, 36% said that they were neutral, and just 24%, less than 1/4 of us would identify themselves as being attached to their city. And attachment is not love. Attachment means maybe you voted, you volunteer once a year, and you're part of the neighborhood watch. Okay, congratulations, you're attached. Doesn't have quite as the warm and fuzzy feelings maybe being in love might have. But the fact that love matters was kind of interesting, because at the same time as they were looking at this, they were actually correlating this with economic data. What they found was very interesting. The places that had the highest levels of emotional engagement, passion, and loyalty also had the highest levels of local economic vitality and GDP. Interesting. They weren't going to go so far as to say these were causal, but they were one of those interesting statistics that move together. And those of you who follow statistics and in your own businesses and organizations, when two statistics move together, even if we can't make a bright line connection, we pay attention to that. And the fact that love matters probably shouldn't surprise us. I mean, obviously when children are loved, they thrive. Pets, plants, and objects are loved. They obviously do much, much better. And I do mean objects. Now, we don't suffer from road salt and the snow that's up north right now, thank goodness. I grew up in Ohio. Most cars in Ohio look like this right now, covered in road salt, in dire need of a bath, probably in need of a little bit of service. But this probably represents the way most people feel about their car. It's a tool. It gets them from point A to point B. You know, you do the scheduled maintenance, maybe, you wash it occasionally, and it's functional. It gets you from point A to point B. And a lot of us have that sort of very functional relationship with our city. You know, we pay our taxes, we obey the law, we spend our money, and in return we consume the city's resources. Okay, that's fair. That's what most citizenship is based around, that particular covenant, as it were. But we all know when somebody goes above and beyond, and we all know somebody who maybe really loves cars, the ones who go out there on the weekend and they wipe that car down, they wax it with a diaper, they change the oil, even if they haven't really even driven it, you know, more than a couple of miles, they love that car. And it looks and feels very different than the car that most of us drive, right? They've invested something, not only their time, but they've invested some of their emotional content and their identity into that object, and it clearly shows. Now, don't you think if we invested a little bit more of our emotional content and our identity into our neighborhoods and into our city, that it would shine a lot more like this car and it would go beyond this very functional relationship? I believe that. And I'm encouraged by the fact that every time I do these workshops, every time I go from city to city, I find more and more people who start nodding their heads and going, yeah, we could do that. And then they go out and they do some extraordinary things. I'm going to show you some of that here today, because this idea that love matters really is pretty cool. Now, I started asking this question, what do people love and what do they hate about their cities, several years ago. And it was always very interesting, the way people would answer this question. They were very clear and very consistent, actually, on the stuff that they hated. And then, of course, what they loved tend to be wildly different and personalized to them. But the stuff that they hated was kind of interesting. They hate big things, big, intractable problems that you could spend a ton of money trying to fix, and I'm not sure you ever create a whole lot of love for that. Big intractable problems like transportation, parking, bad design, a bad education system, all of those kinds of things that you could spend a lot of money trying to fix, and of course you have to, but I'm not sure that you ever will fully be able to fix them, and I'm not sure you ever create a whole lot of love for that. And perhaps nothing symbolizes this more, and those of you obviously with the city, you know this, the pothole. And we as citizens hate potholes, don't we? We complain about them all the time. And I liken the pothole is to sort of like, it's the hangnail, it's the paper cut of sort of city irritations. You know, we all have that one pothole that's maybe to and from work, to and from school, and it's like, damn, so why doesn't somebody fix that? So we complain to the city eventually fixes the pothole, and we think that's sort of the nature of the dance that we do with our cities. Now, here's the problem. I can guarantee you this. We could fix every pothole in the city of St. Petersburg, and people would say, well, thanks, the streets don't suck quite so bad. You get no love for filling potholes, right? There's no emotional return on investment for filling those potholes. You have to do it, but I'm saying that, you know, in terms of how we prioritize the way we're going to spend our money, the way we're going to spend our time and attention, I think we could probably get by with a few less potholes being filled if we took that time and energy and focused it in on some other things, on some of the things that people love. And what they love tends to be kind of interesting. They tend to be small things, intimate things. And I liken them in the book, I call them love notes. Because this idea of the love note kind of matters. And gentlemen, we've all had this experience at some point in our lives where we forget to give the note that goes with the gift that we give to our friend, our significant other. And we learn early on that that note actually is pretty darn important. In fact, it may even be more important than the gift itself, because it says something. It says we've taken a moment, we've made an emotional connection with the person, and it's thoughtful, and it personalizes it, and it creates this intimate bond between us. And it has an outsized impact on the way we feel. Now, love notes in cities are the same kind of thing. There are these small things that have an outsized impact on the way we feel about our places. And Mayor Foster mentioned the idea of, you know, these love notes. And certainly 620 is a great example, Free Fall Theater and some others. Think about that, those small things that really sort of go, wow, that's what I really love about St. Petersburg. I've got some other examples here to get you thinking about this. In New York, in the last couple of years, they did an extraordinary thing in New York City. They took the busiest intersection in one of the busiest cities in the world, and they made it into a pedestrian-friendly zone. No cars. Think about that. That would be, how bold is that? And what happened was they took the one area where you absolutely wanted to go and people watch. And think about that. Times Square is all about people watching, isn't it? You got all the signs, all this stuff going on, and tons of people. But if you were, a couple years ago, if you took one step off the curb, you were going to get run over by a cab. And if you stopped on the sidewalk, you were going to get run over by a New Yorker. It was sort of the devil's choice, as it were. Now, what they did was pretty amazing. They said, okay, cars to the outside. We're going to make places to sit, and we're going to bring in Wi-Fi. And they're going to turn this into a place where people actually want to sit and look around. And it's wonderful. And in the grand scheme of New York, it's a small thing. But it definitely changes the way we feel about the city. And if you haven't been back, I encourage you to go and check out pedestrian-friendly Times Square. It's an amazingly different experience. And while you're in New York, you'd best go also check out the Highline Park. Highline Park was this elevated train railway about a mile long in the meatpacking district in Lower Manhattan. For 30 years, they couldn't figure out what to do with it. It was the ultimate sort of white elephant. A lot of people said, tear it down. Other people said, no, redevelop it, do this, do this. And a small group of people, led by some citizens, they came up with this idea. They said, we're going to make it into a vertical park. And you wouldn't think that being 2 stories above the city would be absolutely magical, but it is. What happens is you're walking around, you see all these other people, you get these grasses and these trees that are growing there, and they actually go through these buildings that have these sort of cutouts. It's pretty amazing stuff. And it's this little park about 2 stories above the city of New York, and it radically changes the way you feel about that space. And again, in the grand scheme of New York, it's a small thing, but it has a huge impact on the way people feel about that city. So I highly encourage you to go back to New York and check out a couple of great things that they've done there in the past. Millennium Park in Chicago. Hey, folks here been to Millennium Park? Anybody? Yeah, tell me if you had this experience when you went to Millennium Park. This is actually called Cloud Gate. Is the formal name of the piece, but all good public art eventually gets a nickname. And the nickname for this is they call it the beam. When you walk up to the beam, you find your reflection. You take your picture. You take your friend's picture. You take the picture of the skyline in the back. You stand there. You see kids playing underneath of it. It's like this giant funhouse mirror. And it's this great example of this, of how we interact with the art there. And right next to it, there are these video towers, several stories high, and they have these faces that change because there are these video screens. And then during the summer months, they have these water cannons, and they shoot the water out, and they create this sort of above-ground pool right there. And you'll see hundreds of kids playing there. Play is incredibly important in our personal relationships. Think about how you bond with your friends and family over these unstructured, unplanned moments of play, when we're completely at ease and we're just, being ourselves, having a good time. Play. How do we play with our cities? Well, this is a great example of the importance of play. And I think that's one of the kinds of things that we have to actually start thinking about in terms of creating a better relationship with our city. How do we find some of those opportunities where we can actually play with our city? And I think public art is a great vehicle for encouraging that type of play. And this one, very simple, and it doesn't cost quite as much money as Millennium Park did, which is a $475 million love note, and big love note, I get that. These were the street pianos project that started in England. The legend has it, a guy moving in Sheffield was trying to move his piano to his new flat, which was up the stairs, couldn't get it up the stairs, so he took the piano, put it on the street with a sign that said, "Play me." And people did. Excuse me. So what happened was some artists took this idea of these impromptu street performances and they put these Play Me, I'm Yours pianos, and they've traveled all around the world. And what happens is you create this little moment of fun, a little impromptu concert. You sit down, maybe you don't know what you're doing, you're banging away, it's still kind of fun, but every now and then you might actually find somebody who really knows what they're doing and you have this wonderful impromptu concert. And is it long? Probably not. It's a few moments, it's a smile, but it's one of those little things that will stay with you as you're walking around that city. This one happened to be on the bridge there in London between the Thames and St. Paul's. Great location. But it creates this little moment and a smile. And never underestimate the importance of a smile in this whole process. This is a really simple one. Cedar Rapids, a couple years ago, 2008, there was the flood that hit Iowa, which, by the way, that flood was in terms of the natural disasters that have hit this country, Katrina was like the third largest natural disaster. The fourth largest was the Iowa floods. Most people don't realize how devastating that was to that entire region, and Cedar Rapids was sort of the epicenter of that. And this one group in this one neighborhood, they started a fairly simple process. The year after the flood, one of the first things they did is they made these little planters, and they did about 24 of them the first time. And they put these little signs on, and they just said, "Cultivate Hope." And they gave those planters out to the people in the neighborhood and said, encourage them to put them on the street corners, put them in their yards, et cetera, et cetera. People loved it. Next year they did 100. Last year they did over 200. Cultivate Hope. A simple message, elegantly delivered, but wonderful little love note. Now, yes, sir.
What's in the planter?
What's in the planter? I don't know what type of plant. I'm sorry, this is a little dark there. Yeah, it was, I think, obviously something that was robust. I don't think it was going to die or anything too quickly or anything like that. So I'm not exactly sure. Not a horticulturalist, but they obviously, tried to get, something that was sort of beautiful and would grow there. Sorry about that. It's a little hard to see some of these in this light right now. Tampa Museum of Art. Which is a wonderful love note to the entire community, and I'm a big fan of the museum. But I think they did something very smart there. They added a couple of other elements that we probably take a little bit for granted. One is the dog park that's out in back of it, and the other one is the playground that's out in front of it. Now, of course you have to have the museum to anchor that, but these other two elements really humanize that museum in a wonderful way. Because, I mean, let's be honest, as high-minded as we'd like to think of ourselves, how often do we actually go into the museum and sort of have that whole museum experience? Maybe not that often, but every day, people are out there using the dog park and using the playground. And I'm sure at some point, people said, is this really necessary? Lawsuit waiting to happen, the whole playground kind of thing. I said, no, these are important. These are these human touches that actually make that museum even better. Small things that have this sort of exponential impact. You need the museum, but these two little touches, small things, I think have this exponential effect on making that an even better place for the community. And a great love note. And I share a lot of these slides I use when I travel literally all over the country, and I'm starting to travel around the world telling these stories. I tell the story about St. Petersburg in the Saturday morning market. I say this is a wonderful thing, because most communities have these little farmers markets, right? And we tend to think of them, oh, that's kind of sweet. But no, you know what? These are really pretty darn important in the way we feel about our city. And think about how important the Saturday morning market is and how wonderful of a place it is. I tell people it's where St. Petersburg goes to meet itself. When you're trying to launch a new Buy Local campaign, where do you go? You go to the Saturday morning market, you hold up signs, you give out t-shirts, because that's where the community goes, that's where they rally. Mayor Baker, I always thought was a brilliant political move, was going down there and playing his guitar on a regular basis. I mean, think about that. It wonderfully humanizes, the mayors. We tend to put mayors, it's like, oh, the mayor, it's very official. But to your credit, you're out there giving hugs, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a wonderful thing, because this is where St. Petersburg goes to meet itself. Every community has these little farmers markets, and they don't necessarily think of them as being that important, but I believe they actually are. And people who love their city are a wonderful love note. This is Katie O'Keefe. She's from Cleveland, Ohio, and I interviewed her for the book. And it's a little hard to tell here, but on this, in her, I got this pointer. She has the Cleveland skyline tattooed on her arm. And this is a famous statue there in downtown Cleveland. And Katie absolutely loves the city of Cleveland. Friends tell me that she rides a bike to work. She's a web designer at Case Western Reserve University, and she sings to the city. She talks to the city, all that. She's not crazy. She just really loves the city. And what I think is amazing about that is when you see somebody like Katie, you can't help but go, wow, this is a great city, because somebody is that passionate about it. And I think the converse is true. It's like if I lived in Cleveland and I saw that Katie stopped caring and maybe wasn't as animated or as vocal about this, I go, wow, maybe something's wrong with Cleveland. But Katie is a wonderful barometer of that. And I have to say this, maybe you guys know anyone here in Tampa or St. Petersburg or Tampa Bay. Have you ever seen a Tampa Bay or a St. Petersburg tattoo? I'm still waiting to see one. I'm still waiting. Leslie, you've seen one? You've seen them? Okay. I haven't seen too many. I'd love to get some examples of that. So if you know friends who have it, I encourage them to contact me, because I like pictures of that kind of stuff. But I think this is a great example of a walking love note to the city. And a few more things that make cities lovable. Ritual and tradition. Every city has some rituals and traditions, but this happens to be water fire in Providence, Rhode Island. What they did is about 15 years ago, an artist by the name of Barnaby Evans came up with this idea. They planted these braziers in the river that runs through downtown Providence into this round lake that's there. They put cords of pine wood in them, and they light them on fire. It's the most basic thing in the world. It's water and fire. It doesn't get much simpler than that. But it creates this incredible effect when you go down there for it. You smell that pine smoke, you hear the crackle of the wood, and it creates these wonderful dancing shadows because it's moving light. And it's basically a community bonfire on the river. And how many of us have had that experience of just being absolutely mesmerized by sitting and watching a fire? And there's something in our human nature that we really respond to that. And they've basically taken this to a whole municipal kind of level. And I actually had the opportunity to participate in what they call a lighting ceremony. And we got to carry these torches from City Hall down through the village, as it were, and we put the torches into the urn, and from that urn they actually light water fire. And it's a wonderful experience, and it will always inform the way I think about that city. And they do this several times a year, and if you're a local, you love it. If you're a tourist and you're going to Providence, you want to go when there's a water fire going on. Rituals and traditions. Zombie walks. Now, we've had zombie walks here in the Tampa Bay area, but zombie walks actually go with Pittsburgh like this. And there's a reason why. It's a little movie from 1968 called Night of the Living Dead. You guys remember that movie, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead? Romero was from Pittsburgh, and that was actually filmed just outside of Pittsburgh. And then his follow-up movie, Dawn of the Dead, which takes place in the mall. Remember, they're living in a mall, and the zombies are all outside. That was filmed at Monroeville Mall, which is just outside of Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh has become sort of zombie mecca, as it were. The World Zombie Day started there, and so this whole idea of these zombie walks sort of originated there. And the zombie walks are these very slow-moving parades. They sort of shamble through town, dressed all like that. And then good zombie walks will have designated victims. So you guys might be the designated victims. You got like goat entrails stuffed in your shirt, so we descend upon Reuben, and all of a sudden now goat entrails, blood, screams, It's fun, right? Not for everybody's taste, but certainly an interesting kind of thing. And some of these zombie walks are drawing like 10,000 people to participate in them. And what's kind of cool about this photo is I got this photo from the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, sort of the downtown serious business groups and whatnot. They said, no, we wanted to bring the zombie walk to downtown Pittsburgh because it was an authentic Pittsburgh experience. Interesting. They're sort of embracing this idea of a local tradition. Think about that. In Wisconsin, I was just in Wisconsin a couple weeks ago. Friday night is the night for the fish fry. And I guess it goes back to the Catholic Church tradition of eating fish on Fridays, but they've sort of taken this sort of very seriously. all restaurants, not all, but all of them will have some kind of special fish dish on a typical Friday. It says Friday, if it's Friday night, it's fish fry in Wisconsin. I saw this on a t-shirt. I had to sort of get that. And it's very true. It's sort of a ritual and tradition that, and then every city sort of does something with that. But I think it's kind of cool. A bike-friendly city is a lovable city. And the whole idea here is, of course, bikes get us, out of our cars. It allows for more, multimodal transportation. It's better for the environment, fewer cars on the road. All that's good stuff. Healthier, by the way. I mean, obviously it makes us healthy. But if you're a bike-friendly city, it actually says that it's not all about the car. Think about how many of our decisions around city making seem to revolve around the car, and we seem to actually be in more service to the car than we sometimes are in service to the people, especially the way sometimes the rules have to be implemented. If you're a bike-friendly city, you're at least saying, you know what, it's not just about the car, we're trying to make room for people here as well. And if you're one of those cities that unfortunately makes Bicycling Magazine's least bike-friendly cities, it says just the opposite. It says cars matter more than people. It says we're not very healthy, we're not very good on the environment. We're not very much fun, by the way, because at heart, bike riding is fun. So think about that. At the same time, a walkable city makes for a lovable city. Similar reasons. Obviously good for the health, gets people moving and whatnot. But walkable cities allow for two key points. It allows for improvisation and discovery. Think about how many times you've maybe been driving down the street, maybe you're driving down 4th Street, 40 miles an hour, you see a new sign for a shop or a restaurant, and you go, ooh, I should stop. And do you? Probably not, because you'd have to go back, turn around. We all know how difficult that can be. So you log in the back of your head, okay, I'll check it out later. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But when you're walking, and you're walking down Central, you're walking down 1st Avenue, it's like, oh, that's new, check this out, I can go in there. Or I've never been down this street, I wonder what's down here. And improvisation and discovery. How wonderful is it, like in our personal relationships, when we discover something new about an old friend? It's like, I didn't know you went to this school, I did too. Or, it's like, that's a moment. That creates sort of a bonding thing. And how wonderful would it be to discover something new about a city that maybe we've lived in all our lives? Simply by walking down a street we'd never been down before. And we can do that when we create these walkable environments. So walkable is important. A dog-friendly city is a lovable city. With apologies to cats and birds and fish and fowl and all that other kind of stuff, the reality is we don't walk our cats, we walk our dogs. Now, a couple things happen when we walk our dogs. First of all, we're creating a lot of vitality on the street, and that's an important thing. Of course, developers and cities, we like to see people out walking and seeing this sort of sense of activity. And the fact that we always have to walk the dogs, we're actually creating this sort of sense of vitality. A couple other things that are happening there. When you have a dog in the mix, well, tell me this, if you've had this experience, you're walking down the street, two people, and you sort of, hey, and that's your typical encounter, right? But if there's a dog in the mix, somehow that can change. You look at the dog, look at the owner, the dog wags his tail, you smile at the dog. Oh, what kind of dog is that? It's very sweet. All of a sudden now, you're having this little, somewhat negotiated encounter by the dog. It's a little bit different, it feels a little bit different than just the hey kind of, engagement. That's social capital. Now, maybe you never see this person again. That could be true. But chances are, if you're in a neighborhood, you're going to see that dog again. You're going to see that owner again. And maybe that's the beginning of something that we would call social capital. And there is value to that. And by the way, there's a third sort of benefit to this. In an era where we can ill afford more police and surveillance equipment, dogs provide safety on the street. And it's not because my dog, Buffy, is a killer puggle or anything like that. Far from it. The fact is that when I'm out there walking, I'm creating what Jane Jacobs, the great urbanist, called eyes of strangers on the street. There's somebody else out there. They're looking out for me. We've all had that experience of walking down a completely empty street and we feel very exposed by that, right? But if there's somebody out there, like a dog walker, because I've always got to be out there, middle of the night, early in the morning, people are out there walking their dogs. It creates a sense of safety. So maybe in marginal neighborhoods, we ought to start thinking about, tax incentives and whatnot to get more dog walkers into those particular neighborhoods. Simple little things. And it could be as simple as putting in one of those posts, with the mitts that, allows you to clean up the poop. Just makes it that much easier for people to own a dog in a neighborhood. That could be one of those little tipping points that could help, turn a neighborhood into a better neighborhood. Because right now, there's a gap between the city that we desire and the city that we can afford. We all know it. A lot of you are working in that field right now. The challenge is going to become for us, the collective us, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to sort of sit and complain? Hopefully not. I think what we're going to actually try to do is get more people engaged, and those who are engaged, those who actually care, those who give a damn, are going to come out and do stuff like that. Because when we love something, we go above and beyond. We go above and beyond that ordinary level of citizenship, and we do extraordinary things. We fight for things. We forgive shortcomings. And we're willing to go to the mat and do some extraordinary stuff, like come here and brainstorm it with your fellow citizens. And I think that's going to be the goal here today. So that's my spiel on lovable cities and why they matter. And I think now we're going to get into the doing part. You cool with that? Okay. So we're fairly simple sort of rules of the day. You see some interesting stuff going on here, by the way, behind me. This is Michelle Royal. This is my partner. Say hello, Michelle. She is doing what's called graphic recording. She's going to be capturing sort of the ideas and the energy and whatnot in an illustrated form. So at the end of the day, we're going to be able to take some pictures of this. Nobody has to take notes. It's like, oh, there's all the ideas that we generated. And that's part of what her practice is and what she does. I'm getting a weird echo as I get a little too close to that. Okay, so the rules of the day, let's be positive about this. It's hard to be negative about, for the love of St. Petersburg. But so we're going to say yes when we can. We're going to ask what if. We're going to be speculative. We're going to go into that. We're going to respect other people's ideas and other people's viewpoints, and we're going to have some fun. Sound good? The goals of the day. My goal here today, and I think the cities and I think the mayor's goal here today is to turn the fact that you guys are here, you're already sort of engaged with your city. But I think what we're going to try to do is get you guys even a little bit more engaged and show you some projects and some things that have happened around the country, small things that have that outsized impact, and hopefully you guys are going to generate some great ideas for the city, and maybe even you're going to get excited enough that you're going to want to do them as we sort of leave here today. So be prepared for maybe signing up for something that you really feel passionate about. So to get started, first exercise of the day. Everybody has some Post-it notes in front of them, right? All right, everybody take a Post-it note. You guys have the markers and whatnot. Simple process. Write down something that you love about St. Petersburg. Could be about St. Pete as a whole, could be something about your neighborhood, but write down something you love. Take a second and do that. And those of you who are sitting at, back here, come on down. We want you to participate. Join a table. Join a table that's maybe got only a couple folks. We'd like to have tables that have at least 3 or 4 people, because we're going to do some brainstorming. Tony, come on over here. Grab a table. We got one over here. Make some room. So write down something you love about St. Petersburg, and then you're going to share it. And then you're going to bring it up here and you're going to hand it to Michelle. So I wrote down one here just as an example. I wrote down, I love that St. Petersburg is so dog-friendly. That's one of the many reasons why I love St. Pete, but it's dog-friendly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to sort of come up here, maybe write down what you do, and then maybe form a line, come up here, and just say what you love about St. Petersburg. I love the dog friendliness of the city. And then what I'd like you to do is take it, hand it to Michelle, and she's going to put it to the wall of love so we capture all of that thing. Ready? So come on up, let's form a line here. First come, first serve. But I'd like to hear from everybody. What do they love? So,
I love First Fridays.
First Friday, all right.
Walter Fuller Park, Therese Hilliard.
I love the dog parks.
Festival Estates.
What was that?
Friendliness of neighborhood.
Festival Estates, all right.
The waterfront. It's all together.
The water.
Waterfront parks.
The downtown parks.
All of the parks.
Waterfront parks in downtown.
Waterfront?
The waterfront and the boats.
Front porches.
Arts friendly.
The museums.
The sunsets.
Yeah, the sunsets aren't bad here, are they?
The shops on Central Avenue. Locally grown food availability.
Very good.
Living on the bay.
Sorry, what was that? A little loud.
Living on the bay.
Living on the bay, all right.
Waterfront and the museum.
Our history and historic tours.
Neighborly.
We are a neighborly city.
There's always something going on.
even at 3 a.m. anymore. So.
Fishing and kayaking.
All right.
The Augusta Block Streets.
Art walk.
Art walk.
And unlike Tampa and other cities, St. Petersburg is easy to get around.
It is.
Small, funky shops. I like the friendly people.
All right.
Our local businesses, especially the 600 block ones.
U.S. Library on the waterfront. U.S. South Library.
Beautiful library.
The love of the people.
Walking areas on the waterfront.
All right.
The people.
And the people. All right. So, if you noticed, a lot of people said waterfront, the park, sort of the natural beauty. And you know what's kind of good, that I like the fact that we start hearing stuff over and over again, even if it's the same sort of thing. You hear it from other people, go, that's what I love too. And you realize that there is a lot of the things that really bring us together are some of those, the simplest things in our community, the people, the waterfront, the small businesses, the locally grown foods, little things. Well done. So Michelle is capturing all of that up there.
I love St. Pete too.
In the book, I write about this idea of public displays of affection. Like if you were trying to decide if two people were in love, you'd look at, how do they behave? Do they hold hands? Do they kiss? How do they interact with each other? You'd look at a number of different things. You go, okay, those folks are in love. Well, how do you know if somebody's in love with their city? That's a pretty good question. And I came back to this idea. One of the ways is this public display of affection for your city, and that was symbolized by this idea of a t-shirt. T-shirt. And this t-shirt, I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. And I got this t-shirt at a shop there called Rubber City Clothing, because Akron's the rubber capital of the world. And it says Akron, says 1825, which is when the city was founded. And you can't read it here, but it says, where the weak are killed and eaten. Not technically true, but it was one of those sort of cool Akron shirts. Akron had a little attitude and things like that. We don't necessarily think of Akron as like, it's like, yeah, Akron. It's like, no, so there's a little bit of attitude. And then this one, I got this, there's several of these that are now out there. Detroit Lives is one of them. There's from this group called Pure Detroit. Kid Rock has come out with this whole thing, the t-shirts, and this whole line of clothing says Made in Detroit. Sadly, it was discovered that the t-shirts were sourced to like Bangladesh. That didn't do too well. So, at least you got to get the American Apparel, brand stuff when you do that. If it's made in Detroit. But the sentiment is still pretty good. This one is from St. Louis, STL, and the STL style. And in fact, I wrote about these guys here. This is Jeff and Randy Vines. They're the owners of this little shop called STL Style House there in St. Louis. And they're on Cherokee Street, which in many ways is like our 600 block, which is wildly cool. These little shops that have sort of emerged here in the last couple of years in this old part of St. Louis. And the way they describe it, they said the t-shirts, they said, we're not selling t-shirts, we're selling local pride. The way they approach it is they're thinking about the t-shirts that they're not gonna sell to tourists and whatnot who are coming there, to watch the ball games or visit the city and see the arch typically. They're selling to the people who live there, the ones who want to identify that something that a local would wear, something that's kind of cool. And what's kind of interesting is that these sort of shops have sort of proliferated all around the country. This is Lauren Tom. She actually runs a shop in New Orleans called Flirty Girl. F-L-E-U-R-T-Y, fleur-de-lis, Flirty Girl. And in the midst of, this recession, she's opened 2 shops and has grown her business like several thousand% in the last 4 years. Selling t-shirts, New Orleans here, New Orleans, proud to call it home. Pretty cool stuff. This one's kind of interesting. We've all heard of this one, Austin. Keep Austin Weird. You remember this? This actually started out as a buy local campaign. Olga, did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah. But it was a buy local campaign that people really embraced. They fell in love with the idea, and it's now become this sort of de facto Austin motto, if you will. And you can go there, and if you go to Austin, you still want to get a Keep Austin Weird t-shirt. And even the locals, maybe it's got the point. The locals may not wear these anymore, but I still think it's pretty darn cool. This one I got in Cleveland. Cleveland that I love. Get it? Kind of funny and kind of clever. This is kind of interesting because it plays on this idea of local knowledge. In New Orleans, used to be obviously a lot of festivals there. There's Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest, and things like that. And before cell phones, people used to use wayfinding to try to figure out where to meet. So it's like, okay, if you're going to Jazz Fest, Let's meet up around 3 o'clock. Okay, where am I going to meet? Well, meet me at the flagpole. So there are these flagpoles, and the main flagpole areas people would know to go there. So if you see that, you go, that's a New Orleans shirt. That's somebody who's been to Jazz Fest. That's somebody who recognizes that. And then this one says here, neutral ground side, and this says sidewalk side. Any folks here been to Mardi Gras? Yeah. So yeah, you have to make this decision, right? Which side of the street are you essentially going to watch the Mardi Gras from? Sidewalk side or neutral ground side? And families who will go to Mardi Gras year after year after year, you have a place that you always go to watch Mardi Gras. And so this is like Coke and Pepsi, whatnot. McDonald's, Burger King, the whole 9 yards. And what I think is kind of cool is that you wouldn't necessarily know that unless you'd actually been there. And this is my friend Robert Fogarty, and this photo was kind of interesting. He said when he was wearing this t-shirt, and this photo was taken in Thailand. He said he was in Thailand, he was wearing the shirt, and somebody walked up to him and goes, New Orleans. Yeah, New Orleans. Several thousand miles away, somebody recognized that, and they had that connection back to the city. But it would have to be somebody sort of inside knowledge around that. Now, here's the question. T-shirts. And if you guys open up these sheets of paper in front of you, you're going to find one that looks like this. So your first big exercise of this morning, what kind of T-shirt would you design for your neighborhood for St. Petersburg? Yeah, if we can bring the lights back up, that'd be great. So let's take a few minutes, something that maybe you, as a local, might wear. You think that would kind of be fun, kind of clever, kind of cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes. You guys are going to design your T-shirts, and we're going to come up. We're going to designate somebody from each table. You're going to come up and share the T-shirt, and we're going to see if there's some great ideas here. And maybe somebody's going to take some of these ideas and maybe even turn them into some T-shirts, or maybe start some new businesses out of that.
So we know that we're the sunshine city more than Florida is altogether, and we get sun more than almost any city in the country daily. Oh, it's Peter. So we want to play off the sun, and then we also want to play off that, there's a huge slow food and locally bought food and growing movement. And then so we thought of Grow St. Pete, and we connected the sun to that, because of course they power each other back and forth, as well as the Grow St. Pete, in that we want people to connect and help grow St. Pete as a city itself. So nice. There we go.
This amalgamation of three started out as St. Pete Shines, and then Hunter added the water, and then another one said the crown of Florida, so we added the crown on it. So we have the water, the sunglasses, the shining, St. Pete Shines, and then on the back, we have three different backs for it. So one is Shell Yeah, with a shell on it, and the other one is St. Pete Pigeon with a pelican, and then the bottom one is Float Your Boat into St. Pete.
Well, we've kind of got St. Pete's pretty diverse, but we've got kind of the beach side and the bay side, and Central Avenue is kind of the central icon of St. Petersburg. We've got a lot of historic structures along there, so the idea is to have little icons, obviously, that represent the beach side, little icons that may represent the bay side, and then Central Avenue kind of running down the center of things, connecting both.
We tried to come up with some iconic views of St. Petersburg along with a tagline or a logo. So what we came up with was some views graphically of iconic things that everybody associates with St. Petersburg. So we've got the rainbow arch of St. Pete on top, but then in the center here we've got some different spots. This is the downtown waterfront parks. We've got some water here. We've got some question marks because we don't really know what the pier is going to look like yet. We've got the Vinoy over here. We've got some trees. We've got some little people here representing the Second Time Arounders band. We've got some more buildings over here. There's the dome over here in the background with the rays over it. We've got the Skyway Bridge over here. There's even a little spot over here with the dog park and a couple little pieces of dog poop. And we've got down here where it says, best views ever of St. Petersburg. And over here on the sleeves, we've got the iconic mustache from Dolly that everybody can identify with the city. So that was what we came up with.
Very good. All right, on the wall.
So here we have Meet Me in the Berg, and it's the St. Pete skyline, the waterfront, and then on the back we could have a listing of all of the different neighborhoods in St. Pete.
Our suggested theme is that 10,000 pelicans can't be wrong.
Awesome.
The general concept is the heart, I love the bird, but inside the heart are all these postcard-sized images of landmarks in St. Petersburg that we all identify with.
So that's pretty cool. Now, you guys did that in what, 15 minutes? I mean, think about, I mean, there's some really good stuff there. I mean, we could pay marketing firms, you know, lots and lots of money to come up with stuff that probably wouldn't be even as good. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's authentically generated. You go, I like that. 10,000 pelicans can't be wrong. Be in the Berg, beachside, bayside, grow St. Pete. I mean, this is good stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff there. And maybe some of you even have these ideas like, hey, you know what, I'd wear that t-shirt. And there's lots of ways that actually you could turn those into t-shirts. It's not that expensive to do anymore, so maybe even think about that. But well done on that. So we've accomplished the first fun part. So here's the next exercise. Now here's the challenge that we all face, is that all of us see the city through our own perspective, through our own eyes. We can't help it. Now, as much as we may try to empathize with other people, you know, the fact is that I'm male, I'm this tall, I'm this old, I come from this particular background, so I see the city through my particular perspective. The challenge for all of us is to try to get beyond that perspective and see the city through other people's eyes. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to ask you to empathize a little bit and role play a little bit. Now, if you open up the next sheet on your tables, you're going to see that you have a character there. It's a person, and maybe it's, you know, what have we got here? Because we didn't get everybody. So we've got a business owner over here. We've got a retiree, 65 years old. Tourist visiting from somewhere. Young professional, 28 years old with a college degree. We've got college student, 21. We've got teenagers over here. That's a good one. We got married with kids. Okay, I'm liking this. I think that's a good mix. Here's what we're going to ask you guys to do. I'm going to ask you to sort of think about the city from the perspective of your character here, and tell me 3 things. I want you to tell me 2 things that you like about the city, 2 things that maybe you don't like about the city, and 2 things that you'd like to change. 2 in each. So you know, I'm sure there's lots of things that you could come up with, but what are your top 2? And sort of talk amongst yourselves and figure out, but if I was a teenager, what are my 2 things that I maybe like most about the city? Maybe what are 2 things I'd like to change about the city?
First of all, there's lots of things to do in the city of St. Petersburg, economically and socially. There's always something going on. You could almost put that as a dislike because there's too much going on. It's hard to do it all. Secondly would be the city of St. Petersburg really has a good partnership with event organizers and businesses. It seems like they're always bringing in people. And just after experiencing the Rock and Roll Marathon, it was unbelievable how they had it cleaned up. Technically, we were in their way when we were trying to clean up. We had to just get our people out so they could come through, and they slammed it out within 5 minutes. It was really unbelievable. City does a great job of that. Things we don't like, obviously it's crime. Crime is a deterrent to the vitality of any neighborhood that has it. I don't have to preach on that one. And a little bit of traffic and parking, and that's in specific areas. We beat the hell out of Tampa when it comes to traffic. We can just go right through the city. We got great corridors. We have 275, but you know, everybody's going to complain about traffic. So, yeah, parking meters. You know, anytime there's a big event, and there are usually quite a few of them, you have to struggle to find parking. But you can generally find it. You just have to walk a little bit, and we need the exercise. 2 things to change. One is public safety. If we could fix the crime situation in certain areas, it would really make those areas more vibrant. And secondly, business friendly in the permits and inspections area of businesses. I still hear people trying to create restaurants, and it's difficult. to get the inspectors to come at a specific time, even with the cell phone systems we have. They just won't call or be on time, or we'll just be there a day. And
sounds like the cable company.
Exactly, and that's been an irritant for years.
Sure.
So.
What do we like about the Student Coast, about the city? Beaches and entertainment, primary. Secondly, what don't you like? Old drivers and limited job opportunities. What would we change? We have a concern that we have an outstanding university here, just a personal side that somebody's trying to destroy, that educates a lot of young people. Florida's primary industry are tourism, agriculture, and construction, all low-pay jobs. We would like to see a business hub created here with clean industries, research, medical. Research has started at USF. Medical, we have a fine medical institution at USF in Tampa, and high tech. And attract those industries which would attract the young people once they get their college education to stay here. College educated people are not going to stay for tourism, agriculture, and construction. And that's what we believe would be necessary to attract and retain the young people.
I'm Tim. And I'm Greg. And so when one is 28, single, employed with a paycheck and a college degree and a young professional, there's a lot to love, period, about life. In St. Petersburg, we think this kind of person is especially attracted to our downtown and all that we have going on there, between the waterfront and the nightlife and just the continual activities happening almost every night, certainly every week. And this person also really likes the scale, the accessibility, both from a transit standpoint and also accessibility in just being received by, this is a place where you can, if you're willing to put in the work, you can get to know your city council members and business leaders in the community. This person, we think, dislikes a lack of professional opportunities. As a region, we've lost a lot of major employers. And this is the kind of person that's seeking to try and continue to improve their mobility economically. And this is probably your key demographic that's really looking for mass transit. So that's, here, getting around in the city of St. Petersburg is probably not too bad, but this person's probably, going other places and would like to see more transit opportunities. From a change standpoint, we kind of took that career opportunities piece and felt that we could promote some of what's happening here. We certainly as a city are going to try and keep attracting big businesses, but try and change career opportunities and support some of the initiatives that are growing small businesses and new enterprises and kind of support entrepreneurs in the area. We also felt that we could, I think you can always improve your communication and marketing, and that was something that we really are probably better at doing great things here and having great things going on than we are about telling people about them. And that in many ways could help us if we could just communicate better about all the great stuff going on here. And the other change is maybe a mindset change to value growth. I think everybody likes St. Petersburg like it is today, but if you don't change anything, it's not going to stay as great and as we all like it. And so adopting this mindset of smart growth and identifying that's going to help all of our businesses and all of our families to do better and continue to make this the kind of character and place that we want to be.
Hi, I'm Brian. I was born in St. Pete, and some of the things we looked at as a tourist visiting this area in St. Petersburg were obviously the positives initially. And with regard to that, it's walkable, people are friendly, sunken gardens, the Vinoy, and the weather. So those are things that people obviously are going to like. And then there were a couple things, or several things that we thought that maybe we could improve upon, and that would be, for example, tourists coming to St. Petersburg, if they're driving, there are a lot of signs on the interstate. Now, I know there are probably some issues that would be difficult to overcome, but I think they could. be overcome, and those would be maybe unique artistic signs that create that emotional connection that Peter mentioned, so that we're not just another city people are driving through like every other city in Florida with the green generic signs. And then maybe something with the foliage on the interstate that could be improved, but it does create that connection, that emotional connection that people will remember St. Petersburg. And then the other issue was, I think, with the history, right?
More history, that people would know more about the neighborhoods and distinctiveness of the neighborhoods, as well as perhaps have more boutique hotels downtown or around where people can easily access the city. And the possibility of having bicycles where people can rent a motor for a day as well.
So we had a 35-year-old married couple with children, and when we were interviewing them, they kept going on and on about the positives, so we have a few more than two. The first was that everything's really, really close. The second was that there's great colleges, which counter the negative of possibly improving upon the K-12 schooling. The neighborhood community diversity, the ability to play outside in parks all year round, the job opportunities that are close to home, the educational and cultural experiences like the Edible Peace Patch and museums, and the amount of free festivals. For the negatives, we had the K-12 school systems and that they can't walk to all the beaches. For changes, we said less chain link fences for pre-events that get set up like a week in front. And they want more interactivity and opportunity for kids to play.
Teenagers. We have a few of everything. Teenagers, they don't like to stop speaking once you get them started. Likes, we have malls, parks, beaches, pools, and skate parks. I think we have one. More would be good. Dislikes, a roller rink. I recall that being a big source of discussion for a while. Many want one. Need more arts education in the community without large expenses. Anyone can get private teaching, but to have something accessible to them because the school's arts programs are dwindling. And teenagers complain there's just not enough to do. They're bored all the time. Changes. More school activities, the arts, a lot of things are getting cut, finding ways to, maybe for the city to get back involved and try to supplement that. Safety, bullying, huge, huge problem in the schools, especially in middle schools. More jobs for teenagers. If it's difficult for an experienced professional to get employed, imagine what it's like for a teenager or a young adult who hasn't had any experience or education yet. They need mentors, some things available to help them with future planning.
We're 65-year-old retirees, and what we like about this awesome St. Pete is the improvements over the years. We had Charles at our table, who was born and raised here, and he definitely liked that. We're neighborly, so we are a city, but we have a small town feel. And we like the grid pattern that, St. Pete was set up as it was a planned city, so what we don't like, I don't know about that one so much. What we especially don't like is mass transit. It's kind of hard to get around at our age, and we're not gonna, for example, Tony was saying, we're not gonna wait for it to take an hour to get from St. Pete Beach downtown when it only takes 15 minutes to drive. And we obviously don't want to wait for a bus for however long. There are no concessions for us at the beach. There are not enough services. Crime is another one. We're lacking vegetarian restaurants. For some reason, we've gone really veggie at our age. And then, what would we change? More senior discounts. We need those. An advisory board. There's a lot of knowledge there. There's a lot of knowledge. Well, we have a lot of knowledge we want to share. And, day activities. We're not all going to be out till 3 o'clock in the morning like you youngsters. So we need stuff happening during the day too. So that's us.
All right, very good. That's everybody. Okay, what I think is kind of cool is you started hearing stuff, similar things, lots of people wanting mass transit, and you realize that the teenagers and the retirees are both sort of in that same boat, not wanting to have to be dependent on a car or a ride. And I sometimes think that when we start looking at stuff like this, we see unlikely combinations of potential allies for some of the key issues that we're facing, in our cities. That you go, wow, teenagers and young professionals both feel about this. So I think that was sort of an interesting exercise. And it's always good to try to put on somebody else's, shoes and take a spin in them for a little while. It's a good empathy thing. And recognizing that our city is very multifaceted, and how we sort of perceive it may be very different from how somebody else perceives it. Maybe we can help, move, their agenda along as well. So good on you, well done. All right. I want to share a few more love notes with you guys. Some of these small things that have an outsized impact, because some of these are just wildly cool, and then I'm going to actually turn it back over to you guys for sort of the last exercise, if you will. Can we bring the lights down for this, just while we're doing that? Okay. In Muskegon, Michigan, there's been a bandit artist there for about the last year and a half, and what they've been doing is they've been painting these bicycles, these funky colors, and then they sort of chain them to different signs and things around the city. And what's kind of cool is people have really embraced this. They love it. It's like, oh, there's a new bicycle out on 3rd Street. And so people take photos, they'll tweet about it, they'll, social media and things like that. And it's kind of whimsical. Apparently a few people actually know who the artist is, but they're not really saying. They didn't tell me. But what I think is kind of cool is that the city technically could recognize that this is abandoned property and cut them off and throw them in the dumpster, but they don't. They recognize, wait, this is actually kind of fun. People enjoy this. And what the artist eventually does is they come back and they move them. So they don't actually stay there forever or anything like that. So a nice accommodation by the city recognizing something kind of fun, simple. A little bit bandit kind of style here. Power of a coat of paint. In Portland, Oregon, there's a group there called City Repair, and what they do is they work with neighborhoods that are actually trying to sort of take back their streets. Now, many of you probably have asked for what they call traffic calming in your neighborhoods. It's like you want the cars to slow down. Say, hey, we got kids playing here, cars are racing through, et cetera, right? Well, what this group has done is they work with the neighborhoods, and they say, okay, we want to do something kind of interesting. And they go in and they paint the intersections. They paint the intersections. It's pretty amazing. And they don't get permission to do it, but they go ahead and they do it. And an amazing thing happens. The cars slow down. Think about it. You're driving down this street coming up and you see, what the heck is that? It doesn't look quite right, or it doesn't look quite normal. What happens? You slow down. And what happens when the cars slow down, now all of a sudden now kids are able to actually play out there. Remember when we were kids, we could play in the street? We don't encourage that in our kids today. But they're able to do stuff like that, and they've sort of taken back these little intersections, and now people actually use them as a place for community building kinds of stuff. The power of a coat of paint. And they did something kind of similar in Lexington, Kentucky. Like most cities, Lexington has what they call a combined water and sewer system. And then in a sense, all of that water flows into the same pipe. So it causes problems when people throw trash down the sewers. So we always have those signs, and you see them all around the city. It says, please don't, no dumping, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what they have like right here. But Lexington took it to another level. They hired an artist, and she went out and she painted all of these storm drains throughout the city in these sort of wild colors. And it has this little sign over here. It says, made you look, storm drain awareness. Now, storm drains is a really boring problem, but it's kind of important. And unfortunately, most cities don't have several $100 million sort of sitting around allowing them to go in and completely redo their sewer system. So what are you going to do? Well, this is one way to mitigate some of those problems, and it's the power of a coat of paint. A little creativity around a really boring problem. I think that's very clever, actually. This is Kate Dodrill. She formed a group in Detroit called Soup. And what they do on a monthly basis, they get a bunch of the sort of creative community together, and they all go to like this one restaurant. Everybody buys their own dinner, and everybody throws in $5 extra at the door to essentially sort of create a pot. And during dinner, if I'm a sort of an artist or a creative person, I've got a project that I'm trying to get a little bit of funding for, I stand up during dinner, I pitch and say, hey, my name's Peter Kageyama, this is my project, this is why it's cool, this is why you should vote for me, thanks very much. And people pitch. So during dinner, everybody's pitching, and then at the end of dinner, everybody votes. Winner gets the pot. No arts grant required to do so. Yeah, and I mean, think about, I've seen those. Those are, get official money out of, those organizations. It's ridiculous how much stuff you have to jump through. And this is a way to get money into the hands of creative folks And we all know that artists can stretch a buck like nobody's business, so that $500, $600, $700, $800, they're able to do extraordinary things with that. And another byproduct of this is the fact that they actually are bringing this creative community all together. Now there's this myth that all the creative folks, they all know each other, all the artists are hanging out together. It's really not true. You have, sort of the visual artists over here, performing artists here, digital artists, filmmakers, video, designers over here. They don't know each other. But this is a way to get them all in the same room, breaking bread together, having a conversation. Oh, what do you do? I'm a designer. What do you do? Oh, I'm a performer. Oh, who knows what cool stuff is going to happen out of this? To me, that's the secret sauce of what Soup is actually doing. And actually, a gentleman over in Tampa by the name of Hampton Dorman has started something similar to this over in Tampa. And we're going to try to bring some of that over here to St. Pete as part of that Creative Pinellas initiative. But think about that. Getting a little bit of money, this microfunding, into the hands of really creative people who are going to do amazing things with it. I sense a theme. This is Candy Chang. She is an artist from New Orleans, and she's done several projects, but this is one of the early ones that she did. She created this stencil, and it says, "It's good to be here." And what she did is she made that stencil, and she's using that spray chalk, not spray paint, spray chalk, so it washes off as soon as it rains. She started spraying this message all around New Orleans. Now think about the context of that, or that message in the context of New Orleans, a city that many people thought they had lost. So the simple saying, "It's good to be here," it's like, wow, that's kind of powerful. And she put it everywhere. She would, ask for permission, in front of businesses, put it on walls, et cetera, et cetera. And so you start seeing this over and over again. It's good to be here. It's good to be here. And that reinforces something really kind of positive. Really very simple and very elegant. I love this project. And another one that she did, she took these stickers, like the name tags that we all wear, at meetings and things like that. And it said, "I wish this was," and encouraged people to actually, write something into that. So, okay, and think about this. There's a lot of abandoned buildings and empty storefronts still in New Orleans. So what she was basically encouraging people to do was kind of vote. So she goes, "I wish this was a home. I wish this was owned by someone who cared. I wish this was full of nymphomaniacs with PhDs. I wish this was a grocery." So they took these stickers, they put them out all throughout the city, and it essentially encouraged people to sort of tell us what you think. We pay a lot of money for focus groups and all that kind of stuff, charrettes and whatnot. But this was actually a fairly elegant way to get sort of people out there and voting. And so you walk by these things, you see people essentially saying, "Yeah, this should be X." And you see over and over again. It's like, wow, maybe we should do that. And you know what else happens? Again, think about it. A lot of abandoned buildings, in New Orleans. A lot of abandoned buildings in lots of our cities. But if I walk past one of these buildings and I see these stickers all over the windows and all over the walls, it says something to me. It says somebody cares. It says somebody gives a damn, that they're willing to say, "You know what, this should be something. We can do better." So this, to me, is this is the nice byproduct of that. It shows that the people in that community, in that neighborhood, actually care. And that's incredibly powerful. And I'm not sure that, she probably had that as one of her goals, but it's a really wonderful byproduct of something fairly simple. And I know she, so we're wearing one right there. People love it. I'm not sure what's happened in terms of actually, changing, buildings, the conversion rate of saying, people voting on something like this to actually turning it. Haven't been able to find that out. But this has been popular enough that those stickers are available. You can actually buy them, and they've actually been sold literally all over the country because people want them in all kinds of different places. In fact, some friends of mine in Cedar Rapids, that city, that had the floods, they still have a lot of abandoned property. They went and they did this project as well. So, it definitely has had some legs. This is another one she did in New Orleans. A lot of abandoned schools. A lot of the schools were damaged, and a lot of those blackboards, were flooded and whatnot. So what she did is she went and pulled out all these blackboards, and she spray painted on this as "Before I die," and then blank. And basically encouraged people to write something in. She put them up on the side of this abandoned building, and people then chalk. And people write in sort of their bucket list, as it were. "Before I die, I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro." Okay, that's cool. So they do this every day. People would fill this up. They'd take pictures. They'd wipe it down. Next day, it'd fill up again. Wonderful reuse of old materials that weren't going to be, were going to be destroyed otherwise. Reuse, readapt, and a great way to engage people in that process. Fun. Over in Tampa, you guys know this one, this City Bike Tampa, started by this downtown bike shop. On one night a month, they meet at the Tampa Museum of Art underneath that sort of overhang. And they get 40, 50 people out there. Everyone's got, you know, lights and helmets and all this stuff. Sorry, it's a little dark and hard to see, but folks are riding out there. They're downtown, and they go to some designated restaurants. So they will call ahead. The organizers will say, hey, we're going to bring 40 or 50 people here to your restaurant, your bar. What are you going to do for us? Oh, well, we'll do a drink special. We'll have some appetizers. We'll do some sampling. And so folks actually get to know each other. They get to know their city. They get to see some new bars. The bar owners, restaurant owners, they get some new potential customers. Works out pretty well. Kind of a cool little project. You guys might have heard of this little group, Swings Tampa Bay, Ruben and Hunter. We've actually got Ruben and Hunter right here today. You guys raise your hands. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, these are the guys who've been hanging those swings all over Tampa Bay. So if you see a swing out in your neighborhood and from a tree, it's like, well, that wasn't there before. Chances are these guys were climbing around the tree the night before. And what they've been doing for the last year and a half, about a year, they've been going around and hanging these swings in these different places. And why a swing? And they say it's because it's a spontaneous community building exercise. Really? Well, why? Well, part of it is the fact that you can't help but smile when you're on a swing, right? And think about it. You're walking down the street and you're there with your girlfriend, you're there with your kids, and there's a swing. You push your significant other, your kids play on the swing. You're creating this nice little moment. Remember I showed you those street pianos, that whole idea of that smile? It can be that simple. It's something small, simple, elegant, that allows people to come together and feel a little bit better about their city. And what they've done is actually these swings have actually become quite creative. They've been down at the market. They actually encourage everyone to come in and paint a swing. So you've got some really well done swings, some very artistic kinds of things, and then they'll show people how to hang their own swings. And there was a map out for a while encouraging people to, hey, take some swings, take some rope, go hang it, tell us about it, trying to spread the word, as it were. And I know the city has to officially sort of pull them down, and they do. But I think privately, if asked, I think that most citizens, I see Leslie smiling, the leadership would say, I'm glad that there's people out there and doing this kind of stuff, and I'd really hate to squelch their enthusiasm. So, there's this nice sort of give and take with the city. I think these guys are respectful. They're not going to damage anything, but at the same time, the city is saying, you know what, we like this energy. This is cool stuff. So good on you for doing that, and I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do next. And oh, by the way, this was kind of funny. That swing there was actually in that overpass. Pretty amazing. I'm told that one didn't last very long, but kudos on you guys for doing that there. And then this was actually Michelle. This was the one that was downtown right near the Saturday morning market. We were down there one time, and I just took that picture of her, and I love that. So, by the way, when I talk around the country, I show a lot of examples from Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg. This is one that I do. So we're spreading the good word that we are doing cool things here in St. Pete. These are my friends Jeff and Randy Vines, and they're the ones who own that STL Style company, the t-shirt guys. But what they also did was this project last year, they called it Group Hug St. Louis. So they've got a pretty big social network, and what they did is they said, take a picture of you hugging something that you love about St. Louis, something, someone, and send us the pictures. We'll have a big viewing party, we'll vote on the best ones, it'll be a good time. And they did, and in their little shop, they had over 300 people showed up for this party just to look at the pictures and be part of this community. Lots of people submitted stuff, and like examples was like this girl here, she was hugging, she loved the bike lanes, she's hugging the bike lane. And then this one was, those fountains that, like the kids play in, like over at the Children's Museum over in Tampa. She's hugging one of those fountains because they love that kind of stuff. I think this is a great little idea, and this little group hug idea has actually spread. There's going to be a group hug Cleveland, group hug Pittsburgh. There's several other cities that are participating, and I'm trying to actually get a group in Muskegon, Michigan, where I'm going back there this summer. Michelle and I are going back in June. We're going to try to get them to do a group hug project as well. Maybe that's something that St. Pete could embrace. I mean, we've obviously already got stuff like this going on, but I think this is kind of cool. And then this one was fun. This was in Durham, North Carolina. In March of last year, there was a wedding in Durham. And the wedding, like most, had brides and grooms, it had flowers, it had tuxedos, it had dresses and all this other stuff, living in sin. But it actually was not a wedding between the people. It was a wedding between these 1,600 people and the city of Durham. In what they called the largest civic union in history, these 1,600 people got up in front of folks, and they had this wedding ceremony, and they married the city. Because apparently somebody said to someone, one of those people who really loves their city, well, if you love it so much, why don't you marry it? She goes, good idea. And she did, and they pulled this whole project off. So this Mary Durham project. And their vows included things like, I vow to keep the streets clean and safe, to vote responsibly, to buy local, support local arts and culture, support the local not-for-profit community. Pretty darn cool. And then a big party ensued, and they actually decided they were going to raise a little bit of money with the, you had to buy a wedding license and all that kind of stuff, and they put that towards some local not-for-profits and things like that. So this whole Mary Durham idea, that's a pretty cool idea. Now, with that in mind, most of those things really didn't cost a whole lot of money. Some cost almost nothing at all. Now the question here, and the last exercise here today, and in fact, can I get someone who maybe help, Ruben, would you and Jamie maybe give one sheet of paper to each table? Thank you. Here's what we're going to finish on today. We call it the $500 challenge. If you guys had $500 to make the city a better, more interesting, more lovable place, what would you do with it? So you saw some examples there that, did we lose power there or something? We saw some examples from around the country, small things that have kind of cool, kind of fun. Doesn't have to be, game changing. It has to be interesting. It's something that maybe you guys would actually want to do. So think about that. Here's the challenge. You have $500 to make the city a better place. Tell us what you're going to do. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to get everybody up here, and then we're going to actually pick one. We're going to vote on what you guys think is maybe the best idea. And you don't have to vote for your own project. And by the way, each person is going to vote as well. So you're coming up with the ideas as a table, but then at the end we're going to have an individual vote. You got some Post-its in front of you.
Our top idea was a foot race while juggling oranges. The winner gets the final.
Guys, Michelle can't hear, so bring it down. Sorry, go ahead, one more time.
A foot race while juggling oranges.
So we again had multiple ideas and figured a way to group them into a bike-friendly project. One were keep 3 feet reminders, because of the law that to keep drivers 3 feet from the bike lane, we were going to create stencils to paint on these streets that showed a 3-foot arrow between the bike lanes and where the car should be when there's a biker there. The second was own a block sweeps, so people would basically claim a block that they would keep the bike lanes swept and clean so there weren't nails or sand and stuff in it. And the third, which actually was where most of the $500 comes into, are repair and air stations. They actually make things that, just like you'd lock your bike up to, that have a bunch of tools that hang down that are stuck to it and a pump that's built in that we could put along the bike lanes if people needed help.
So our group came up with Cast a Line St. Petersburg, where $500 would be spent to basically place fishing poles in strategic areas in the city. Kind of came up from an idea. I was out fishing with my wife the other weekend. I was looking on Google Earth to find kind of the best fishing areas in the city. And of course, we got a lot of parks on the waterfront, and we figured this could probably promote the health of the bay, emphasize the importance of fisheries, provide a sense of community and family with it, and obviously you could market it with pretty inexpensive marketing on Google Earth or Google Maps to be able to locate them throughout the city where these poles would be. Bait and tackles provided by the user, and then you need signage at the location to kind of explain the program that, hey, it's your fishing pole, just return it the way you found it. So.
That's right. Cool. Cast a Line St. Pete. Very good.
There's treasure hidden in St. Petersburg. Since the 1500s, when the Spanish checked out this area, it's been hidden, and we're going to have treasure hunts in various parts of the city. And you start with your first clue, and you go and find your treasure or trinket, gives you the location of your next clue. If you finish the entire treasure hunt, you can enter the drawing for cash prizes. And each of the businesses will be participating in the neighborhood that we choose. We'll go to various neighborhoods on a quarterly basis, but this is a big event. Also, there may be a special clue to what the Spanish have hidden.
This is kind of like an amalgamation of all of our ideas, but we thought it'd be the ultimate day in St. Pete, so go for it.
All right. This is Ben over there.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry,
All right, so what we came up with was mobile musicians leading a guerrilla parade with balloons with love notes attached to them. So when it goes up and pops, whether it lands in Tampa or another neighborhood, they have it. And chalk buckets around the park where the mobile musicians are leading the guerrilla parade, so people can draw on the sidewalks afterwards and write love notes.
So people bring their own instruments would be the thing, and just say, meet us at this park for like this big old jam session kind of thing, and then
right. But it's mobile, so they go around the park, and so it's like Pied Piper. They pick up their audience rather than the audience having to go to them.
Our group came up with a way where we can attend all this. We can engage all of our communities to come out and hear about these wonderful activities.
In Tampa, an amazing woman by the name of Julia Gorska-Freeman has developed a website. It's been up for a few years called Brand Tampa. And it's through Ning. If you're not familiar with it, imagine a Facebook site, not page, but your own site dedicated to your community, where all of the citizens and all of the businesses and all of the government activities and nonprofits can develop their own pages, much like you would a Facebook profile, and engage with one another. One of the things, too, that Julia helped do in Hillsborough that Pinellas has been invited to participate in is a homeless resource wiki for Tampa Bay. So all of the community can come in and participate by making all of the resources accurate and current that anyone can access. And you would be surprised how many homeless people spend an enormous amount of time online accessing this information and many other things. So this is our idea of taking this great idea and incorporating it in this community. So do something on Ning, similar to Brand Tampa. We could even bring Julia in as a consultant. Partner with Bright House. One of the bigger problems we have in some of our neighborhoods is the digital divide. Some people don't have access to the internet. It's expensive for some people, and some neighborhoods haven't compensated for that very well. Bright House can solve that problem pretty easily and significantly. And some of the things that it can do is promote local businesses, promote neighborhood events and activities, promote the awesomeness of St. Pete overall, partner with Bright House to improve the citywide remote Wi-Fi access to the net, and then promote multimedia video to promote tourism and staycations and things that help promote businesses in the city.
So we've got family-friendly First Friday. So what we're going to buy with the $500 is bubbles and hula hoops and sacks and egg and spoons, and basically have Northstrow Park as the center for families a few hours maybe before First Friday, so that they can engage, because obviously it's, Central Avenue isn't necessarily the most conducive for families for First Friday. So this is a way of getting them down there, participating in a very beautiful location, and if they want to go ahead and then walk along to Central, well, they've got a lovely beach drive to do that. So that's us.
Family-friendly Stroll Park. Very good. All right, let's put that one up there too. Okay, so you've got 7 really cool ideas, all very doable. Here's what I'd like you to do. You guys still have Post-its there. Each one of you can vote for one project. One man, one woman, one vote. So Michelle, if you would sort of recap our...
Yes, do I have... Hello. Okay. So I do have this on. I'm just going to look back. The very first one, if you would like to vote for number 1, it's called Juggling Oranges. That's what I named it. Number 2 is Bike-Friendly St. Pete. Number 3, Cast the Line, which was about fishing poles, Number 4, Treasure Hunt, a citywide scavenger hunt. Number 5, Mobile Musicians. We'll bring the music, we'll pick you up and you'll bring the music together. Number 6, Brand St. Pete. And number 7, Family-Friendly First Friday.
So if you would either write down the title or even the number, we'll be able to coordinate that, and basically hand it to, Susie's going to come through and hand that to her. Couple things. Actually, Ruben had something he wanted to share with the group, an actual $500 project that he's working on. So why don't you come up and tell us a little bit about that right now. Ruben and Hunter, please.
Hello again. Hunter and I are working on another project with a low dollar amount, low finance, high impact. And it's called the I'm Staying campaign, and it's going to be I'm Staying St. Pete, and it's going to be a video campaign at the start to really gather support and show that there's other people that are going to stay here at our age, so they don't just come here for school and leave or quit their job and leave. So we want to at least start from a video campaign, because we know the reason that a lot of people leave is because they don't feel like they have other people staying. So we want to basically say, I'll stay if you stay. On top of that, we want to raise a small fund that basically we want to call starterships, and we want to be able to fund people to live for 3 to 6 months, be able to start projects or start the thing that they want to do right here, so they don't have to get that 9-to-5 job and then do the other thing in the middle of the night. And thirdly, we want to have idea sharing events like this, where those people can come and share the ideas that they want to work on and gather their support from their friends, so that they have a chance to stay here and work on what they want to here. So that's coming very soon. We're working with all kinds of media partners and other organizations in the area to help gather as many people as we can to stay here.
Thanks. Awesome. Could we bring down the house lights? Because while we're tabulating votes, I want to share one last story and one last example with you guys. In January of last year, Newsweek magazine came out with a list. It was a list of America's 10 most dying cities. Most dying cities. So you can imagine that's a list that no city would ever want to be on. And they based it around this idea of population loss between 2000 and 2010. New Orleans was the #1 city on that. That shouldn't be a surprise considering where they were in 2000. Obviously Hurricane Katrina and losing all those people. Grand Rapids, Michigan was also on that list. And they didn't like it, as you can imagine. Most cities wouldn't. And what happens when, historically, when someone said something bad about your city, what would you do? It's like, well, we need a new ad campaign. We need a PR blitz. We need to get out there and get the message out that, we're not a dying city. Well, right now, obviously, that's a pretty tough sell because most cities don't have the money or the budgets, the resources to go out and do those kinds of things. So they were sort of sitting around going, are we going to live with this moniker of being a dying city, or how are we going to respond to this? In walks this kid in the green shirt, 22 years old. His name is Rob Bliss. He's sort of the Ruben and Hunter of Grand Rapids, Michigan. College graduate from there, does social media for the local TV station there. He walks into sort of the powers that be and says, I have an idea. He says, we're going to do a lip dub. A lip what? Lip dub, L-I-P-D-U-B. And it's actually a lip dub is a group of people lip syncing to a popular song. And we could do a lip dub right now. We could pick the song, we sort of play through this, and I'd take the video, and we'd start over here, and you guys are singing, singing, singing. Done. Lip dub. Very simple, very boring, but a lip dub nonetheless. One continuous shot. He said, but we're going to make it big. In fact, we're going to make it the world's largest lip dub. We're going to get hundreds, if not thousands of people involved in this stuff. We'll shoot it downtown. We'll use YouTube. We'll push it out there via Twitter and social media, and it'll be great. Can you picture that sort of council meeting of some kind? It's like, you want to do a lip what? Using Yoo-hoo, social media, Twitter. How old are you, son, and what's with your hair? Right? Because he doesn't look like your typical sort of city solutions provider. Well, neither does Hunter. But don't let the hair throw you. And to their credit, and maybe because they didn't have a whole lot of choice either, Grand Rapids said, okay, we're willing to try something different, something that hadn't been tested, had never been done before. And the city, of course, didn't have any money, but they said, look, we can provide some police service, we can help close off some streets. They were able to use, to talk to other private donors, and they raised about $40,000 to do this Grand Rapids lip dub. And it was shot last May, and I'm going to show you some excerpts from that. But it involved 5,000 people. It's over 9.5 minutes long in its entirety. It takes place over a mile in downtown Grand Rapids, and it's pretty amazing. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that now. And this microphone's not, oh wait. They said they picked this song because it was about life, death, and renewal, and I think it's because everybody knows the words. High Road. They did 5 takes of this, and this is the 5th and final take is the one that they used. Here comes the money shot. There you go. Very high tech there, holding the microphone to the thing. That video has been viewed almost 5 million times on YouTube. Sorry? 10 by you. It got picked up by every major national and international news outlet, and Rob was interviewed on Good Morning America. And Grand Rapids got tens of millions of dollars of positive brand exposure because they were willing to listen to a 22-year-old kid who didn't look like your traditional solutions provider, who had a weird, untested, different idea. Now, think about that. There's a lesson in there. And the lesson is not to go out and do another lip dub. In fact, don't. It's been done. It's been done really well, and we don't want to be derivative. But what we do want to do is, in the spirit of that lip dub, of saying, maybe we ought to listen to somebody who's got a weird, crazy, untested, completely out of left field kind of idea. It's probably going to come from guys like this, young women like this, who don't look like your traditional solutions providers. But the next time maybe they come up in front of your business, your organization, in front of city council, maybe we'll give them a little bit more, lend our ear a little bit more, because we've seen, it's like, you know what? If we're willing to listen and we're willing to take a chance on these folks, there's some amazing stuff that can come out of that. So I think that's, to me, that's a great lesson in how we sort of embrace all of our community, you know, as being part of this sort of solutions-based situation here. So congratulations on that. Okay, I have a winner. And here's the deal, is the city is actually going to try to find a sponsor to come up with $500 to, for this particular project. So if it's your project, or if it's just something you guys, I want to be part of this, or something like this, Susie, where are you? There we go. Susie in the back. Susie Ahawk is with the neighborhoods department here with the city, and she was actually very responsible for helping to put this together. So Susie, thank you very much. Thank you to the city. And our winner of the unofficial $500, but we're going to try to get it and make it happen, is Family Friendly First Friday. I think all of those were really cool ideas, but I think that one, you know, I think it builds on the success of another thing, which I think is a great way to leverage, you know, resources and leverage that kind of stuff. So good on you, Olga. Hopefully, maybe you will help lead some of that, and maybe contact Susie. But if any of you are interested in maybe being part of that, leave your contact information with Susie, and we're going to try to actually pull that together. And don't be surprised if we don't see that happening here, maybe before the year is out.
Can I say something too?
Yes.
I just wanted to, before, because we're coming to a close, and I wanted to acknowledge Daniel Scott from USF St. Pete, if you'll raise your hand, because Daniel was the first champion of the For the Love of St. Petersburg.
That's true.
We hosted a trial it was the first workshop, and it was
April of last year.
April of last year, and thanks to the, we have such an incredible institution, academic institution, and we have several. USF St. Pete was the one that stepped up to the partnership, and I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Daniel, because where we were a year ago and where we are today is far different, and the the impact that St. Petersburg is having on the nation and the world is significant because of people like that. So thank you, Daniel, for being here again today.
I mean, just to give you an idea, since we've done this in April of last year, we've been to St. Louis, we've been to Akron, Muskegon, Michigan, Valdosta, Georgia. We're going to Cedar Rapids, we're going to Anchorage, Alaska next week to do this. So this is just, we're going to New Zealand to do this. So yeah, and when I go, I always share these stories and you see how much of St. Pete is in there. So thank you very much for being very receptive.
I was going to try to tell everybody who Kona is, but you all know who Kona is. We advocate, we unite, we do all kinds of things. We're involved in a lot of projects, and I saw some great ones here. I'm hoping that the neighborhoods, because it's really, Kona is not an entity of itself, it's the neighborhoods. And so we got to have the neighborhoods to step up. We should be the facilitators. So that's really my pitch. There's 6 projects back there. We got a lot of neighborhoods, let's pick one.
I will share with you, a few months back, Peter did this presentation for the City of St. Petersburg management team. All of us participated in it, and it was a real rewarding experience. So again, thank you again for that effort as well. Share with you real quickly a story. I have a son who's a senior at Baldwin City College in Baldwin City, Kansas. And when he was here in St. Petersburg, I was always hearing, Dad, it's nothing to do in St. Petersburg. And I would, have this conversation trying to enlighten him of all the things there are to do in St. Petersburg. And after his first year in Baldwin City, Kansas, guess what I heard? I miss St. Petersburg. It's a lot to do in St. Petersburg. I didn't say I told you so, but I said, well, when you come back home, I'll kind of take you around and show you some of those things I was telling you about. I'm a native of St. Petersburg, so, for the love of St. Petersburg, it's a lot to me. And I realize how much I love St. Petersburg every time I travel and go someplace else, because I can't wait to get back to St. Petersburg. And someone mentioned earlier about the Rock and Roll Marathon and how quickly the city was cleaned up. Well, that's standard business here in St. Petersburg when you consider all the special events we host. Well, the next day, it's like it never happened because St. Petersburg is clean and it looks, spectacular. And, it's things like that that make St. Petersburg the beautiful place it is, and the beautiful people here, and the leadership of St. Petersburg, and the neighborhoods, which is really the fabric of our community. I would say to you, word of mouth is the best form of advertising. Clearly you guys are here, you're engaged, but it's those who are not here that you need to go back and share this message, encourage them to become engaged, offer mentorships and what have you. And again, one more time, thanks to Peter, thanks to Michelle.